If you'd like to talk about your own Bigfoot encounter, or if you're looking for help from a Bigfoot investigator in your area, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. No Sasquatch were harmed in the recording of this podcast.
Hey, this is Kain Michael with House of Enoch.
Kain, it's been a long time, man.
Yes, it has.
You've been a busy little beaver.
Yeah. Yeah. In this realm, yes, I have.
I think the last time we spoke, you were just kind of getting settled into your new cabin out in the woods. And
okay.
Now you seem to be going full bore.
Yeah, that's I think about 4 years now.
Yeah.
Should be something like that.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you first off, House of Enoch. Why that name? What's the story behind choosing that?
I liked the forbidden knowledge and kind of what the Book of Enoch represents, and then the House of Enoch, tying it in with the subject of Sasquatch and being kind of like the domain of possibly forgotten knowledge.
Do you think that there's a lot of stuff left out of that book?
Out of the
collection, the Bible itself, yeah.
I think it's worth looking into I believe the Bible there's 66 books in the Bible. Uh-huh. And I believe some of the books that were left out are relevant, especially when I believe it happened during the reign of Constantine. They got together and decided basically what books, let's bring all this together.
Right.
And what books should be in it, what books should not be, let's try to have a flow to this. And I'm just not with a man deciding that.
Right, right.
So I think everything can be at least open-minded enough to read some of that stuff. And that kind of stuff fascinates me from that. And I'm really big into the history, Native American history with the mound builders and the giants. Uh-huh. Especially where I live is like the Ohio Valley. That's right where I live. I have a mound at the end of my street. Oh, wow. So Chillicothe is very close, which is Mound City, and Lancaster has Rising Park. There is a lot of history here anyway regarding that. So knowing your area, knowing the ancient sites, all that kind of stuff fascinates me.
Do you know the history of your place now? I've noticed that, while it doesn't seem incredibly old, it looks like it could have some age to it, with that rock chimney and everything.
Yeah, I don't really know how old this cabin is. From speaking to the owner, actually it was the owner's son, this cabin was probably here a long time. You could actually go out in the woods and see the old stumps where they built the cabin from.
Oh, wow.
And this is a hand-hewn cabin. It's like where they used hatchets and took the logs right out of the forest. And from what I gathered from him, this was their family. This family owns a logging company actually here in town, and this was their vacation home. So it was like they would use it for holidays, Christmas, Thanksgivings. There's a nice pond here. They'd take the grandkids and stuff out fishing. And from what I gather, the last person to live here was the son when he was in college. It was somewhat closer of a drive for him where he went. So he lived here, and he's my age. So, and I'm 52 now. So he's an older guy like me. So good 20 some years. No one really lived here 24/7 except for getting together for holidays and stuff like that.
Have you had the chance to bring up the topic with him? Has there been any stories of possible experiences before you moved in?
I have not. I only met him. I met the dad who sold me the cabin, who's a pretty shrewd businessman. He became all right, but we fought for months over the price. And so me and him didn't really get along too good until after we kind of settled the deal. But his son was great. And the first year I moved in, someone delivered like a ton of meat here for Christmas, thinking they were going to deliver here, had the wrong address or whatever. So I called him, and the son came over and got it. And that's when I met him, and someone had just got a wrong address or something. But he showed me a lot of stuff that I didn't know. Showed me how to reprogram the generator here, and this cabin has natural fed spring water. So he showed me stuff about the well, and we never really did. It was cold. So he was here for a while, but I got a little bit of the history of the place, and that was about it.
How much land is surrounding the cabin that's uninhabited?
Well, I bought my lot of land off of theirs that they still own, and theirs is 750 acres right behind me.
Oh, wow.
And then it's pretty much at least that across the street from me. And then there's a good at least 30 acres between like my place and the next neighbor. You can't see anybody out here. Can't see lights. You can't see. I mean, I'm probably, I would say, maybe an eighth of a mile back in the woods off the road, and up about 800 feet in elevation is where my cabin sits. And I know just going north of me to where the road ends, I think it's about 10 miles. On my side of the road, I think there's only 3 houses in 10 miles. So it's it's about as remote as you're going to get, I think, here in Ohio.
Now, just to catch everybody up, I mean, obviously I know your past. There's probably some listeners that don't. You previously had a place. You're a Bigfooter. I don't know which term you like to call yourself, but more than a hobbyist for sure.
Yeah.
I know researcher gets thrown around rather loosely, especially these days. But so you had some stuff going on at your previous place.
Yes. Yep. My previous place was up north of Columbus, so I moved south. That place, that's the area I grew up in. And that ended up buying a place that had a private preserve in the backyard, the backyard. And I had no idea. I've lived there my whole life. I had no idea that was a preserve. And it ended up being part of the school district bought that. And it was like their ecology center at that point. And then if you went through that, there was a church a couple miles away that owned another big plot of woods. And so through all that, it was a nice little area. It wasn't vast. It was, I had to the area behind my house then was maybe 65 acres. And if you hike through it, you could tie into the church area that might give you around 250 acres. But there was a lot, you could do the math and you could easily get with the preserves and stuff in that area 1,000 acres of wildlife right there. Cause it was getting, you're just out of the little city, and it was pretty much east of that. It gets real rural, which also ties into, all the way to eastern Ohio. It's farm fields and stuff like that. So I was surprised. I was surprised at that place. I ended up figuring it was a bottleneck. Why there was activity there, I think, is because things had to go through that area. Uh-huh. And it just did. It really seemed like it was a bottleneck. And I was fortunate enough, to be able to go out there. And I don't know really how it started, but I know at first I was seeing like footprints in the creek. And then there was a little area where I started finding like structures and stuff. And it just, it didn't make sense. Like who's, not a lot of people. And this is, a lot of this time it was in the cold. It's just like this, who's out? And I'd never seen anybody out in those woods. It was, how would I say? It was a very richer area that I lived in. So all the houses that kind of surrounded had the woods as a backdrop. It was actually that so most of the neighbors and stuff it was just they didn't never go back there.
Yeah.
I was out there every night. I got into that to where I started like, hey, I have the opportunity. Maybe I can go out and do this every single day. Go out in the woods, find basically a hike, and just start monitoring anything that's in the woods. And from everything, from sometimes you would hear stuff, sometimes you would, I ended up, I think at that time I had like 10,000 pictures that I took, and I would just take pictures, and eventually I would use those pictures for reference from the day before or whatever. And I'd be like, man, there's like stuff going on right under our noses that you would never be able to see if you're just going out every weekend or, once a month. It's like information being left. Like I distinctly have like pictures of these same two leaning sticks going all the way through the tree, all the way through this forest, and you would never pick up on that. Right. Unless you were out there document it. And then sometimes there'd be one stick, sometimes there'd be three sticks. And it just kind of started like that. And then I ended up total of 18 structures the day after they were built. And I can't remember off the top of my head. I know one was 8 structures the first go around, and a month later, 10 structures were built. And so I further started watching those every single day to see, is anything using them? Is there any activity? Are they being built on? And honestly, I can tell you that most of those never were used again. It was the strangest thing. It was like almost like it was built for one night and one night only. And there was one that would have some activity. There was sticks and like you could climb in this hole. And I wouldn't go in there, but I would walk by and I would just monitor what was inside of this little kind of almost like a lean-to. And you would see like 3 sticks in there sometime, 2 sticks in there. Another time, it was after this. I think it may have even been the night I found it. The first go around, I think it was. I found Christmas fern, which is an edible that you can eat out in the woods, and it was like a bunch of Christmas fern had been pulled, and there was chicken of the woods mushroom and it was like use the fern to make like kind of a bowl as a holder. And that was sitting beside a tree near one of these structures. It's actually the structure that's on my House of Enoch page that you can see. And that fascinated me. I even tracked, because I started looking around, I could see little bits and morsels of this mushroom. So I tracked it, the trace evidence back to a fallen tree where the mushrooms were. And there was literally a stick that had been used to scrape the mushrooms off the tree.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, that's that's kind of like tool use, you know?
I mean, not kind of.
Yeah. And, you know, at the time, you're always like, oh, let's keep this under our hat or whatever. But That's exactly what it was. It was Christmas fern, and it was chicken of the woods mushroom. And there was, from hiking that so much, I did this for several years. There was only two places I knew that this Christmas fern would, or the chicken of the woods mushroom would grow, was that tree and in my backyard, actually where I lived. There's a tree back there that grew it too. So you start piecing all that together, and just, you know, sometimes there would be trackways. Sometimes there would be, you know, there'd be actual activity. Talked about in the past, the rock throw video.
Right.
That was something that, to this day, I kind of gave up on it. You know, there's only so much you can pull out of it. I think there's more. I think there was more to be captured there. It's just, I don't know what iPhone I was using at the time, but it's just limited. Really fortunate just to get what I got, but you can make a pretty solid case that something went up there. And I mean, you hear the audible, the rocks, and you see something look like it's throwing a rock. And I had a sighting. That was right after having a sighting of something.
That's where you saw the spider crawl, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was the spider crawl. And that was a very dark object. I was out in the woods later than what I normally would. My dog had surgery, and my dog was begging me to take him outside. It was about a week or so. So I thought, well, we'll go take a quick walk. And so I was out there a lot later. I was actually out there probably close to the time that I'd usually be coming in. But I just came into this area and up on the top of a ridge, which is kind of in Ohio, a ridge we call, you know, hills. But this thing came out not facing me. It was coming like parallel to me. It didn't see me at first because it wasn't facing me. So I see this thing come out. It's low to the ground, and then it turns right towards me. And it jumps, and I jumped all the way down to the bottom of the ridge, which is an incredible distance. And it kind of put its arms out like Superman into this bush. And it was a humanoid figure. It was jet black. It had very oversized hands. That's the one thing I do remember when it came out, how big his hands were. Like if you think of Mickey Mouse and how they drew his hands compared to his body, that's what it looked like. And it just jumped an incredible distance into these bushes. And as I didn't know what I just saw. I mean, when something like that happens to you, your brain kind of just melts, and you're trying to think of anything but that, honestly. You're trying to think, could that have been this? Could that have been that? And I was walking towards it and up to that area, and I stopped, and I think I was thinking in my mind, this might not be the best idea. And I started to turn around, and that's when all hell broke loose in the woods. And I called Eric at the time because what ended up happening, I mean, stuff was falling out of trees. Stuff was like, it was just chaotic. And then I got a vocalization or something, and it was in the area, right the area that I had to walk through to get back to my place. And I think that's probably when I called Eric, and I'm like, dude, I had to have him calm me down a little bit. He's just like, you're going to have to walk through it. You don't have a choice. You're just going to have to do it. There's nothing you can do. So, I did. I walked right through, right towards where this stuff was going on, and it ended up, nothing happened. It was all good. And then that night was when whatever was out in the woods, I believe, came to my house. And I had a 2-story deck, and it was overlooking the woods. And I went outside on the top story of my deck, and when I and this is at dark, it's dark time, I stepped out there, which I did all the time. Something knocked over all my pool. I had an in-ground pool. Something knocked over pool furniture, and I'm like, holy crap, something's in the backyard. So instinctively, I grabbed my FLIR Scout, and I tried to get this thing on camera. So obviously, I go out there and I'm looking in the woods. I'm like, that's where I thought it was going to be, would be in the woods. But I was wrong. It was standing underneath me, directly underneath me on the deck below. And it sounded like it tore my screen door off. And it shocked me, scared me. And then I literally, just out of my reaction, I went back into my place. I had to kind of gather myself. I went back out, and it's hard to remember now the details by details, but right. I do know that at one point it was behind my pool house, and I was walking the deck, a real long deck, and I was trying to get it on FLIR, and as you could hear it walking, and it was moving around, so I could not get it. It was like pacing me to where I could not get it. It kept itself hidden, and eventually there was another knock out in the woods. So I shined my FLIR over there. I'm looking, and at this point, I was frustrated. I was scared. I was mad. If I had an Uzi, I would have lit up the woods. I honestly was that scared. So I thought, man, I'm not going to fool with this. And I went inside. I shut the door, and I could hear stuff going on out there, and I just ignored it. And the next day, this thing had shook. I had a chain link fence from my backyard to the woods. It had shook it so hard, bent the top rail, screwed up the actual fence door. There was a big muddy handprint on the back of my pool house. There was large impressions in the mulch. It was, and I documented all that through House of Enoch. I did all that. And then eventually I ended up at a different occasion. I got a really good thermal of something out in the woods that was, and this was one where, it was my place. It was actually technically in my neighbor's backyard, but
they don't need to worry about that.
They're oblivious to all this.
Well, yeah, everybody
going on. And but I was able to get this FLIR image. So I was able to go out and line up photos and figure out exactly what tree this was. I went out and I put a dot. I stood right on that tree that this was filmed at, put a dot on there where my height was. And then I could go back and I could superimpose pictures, layers of pictures. And this thing's like it's huge. And it's over 9 feet tall.
Yeah, it dwarfs you. It completely dwarfs you in the overlay.
Yeah, and I use that overlay with my arms stretched out. And, I like to think that's probably the best evidence I've ever gotten so far. And just the fact that even a skeptical person, because I have family members and I have people that question stuff, and I can pull that out and say, here you go. Here is a heat signature. This was taken in Ohio. Here's the comparison. What is it? And no one can answer that, because even it dwarfs a black bear. It's huge. Yeah. So as far as that and all the evidence leading, all the basically going back and all the diligence of just trying to make this as accurate as possible so people can have an opinion. It's not just a FLIR image out in the woods that nobody knows anything about. There's a backstory, there's a story, there's before and after pictures, and there's me in the frame for comparison. And there's actual video, some video of it that I caught it as it was moving, because when this was going on, I had my FLIR out and I was going through the hitting the buttons trying to get something, and at one time I hit the video, and there's a couple second video of where it's actually moving through the woods, and I'm like panicking, trying to get the right setting so I could, because it was moving the entire time. And that last image was kind of like the perfect spot, perfect filter. I was able to get a picture of it.
So this new place you're at, was that a place that you chose by accident?
No, not at all. I moved out of that place. Me and the girl I was with, we went our separate ways, and I ended up living in a camper for a year, a 21-foot camper.
The good old camper year.
Yeah, the old camper year, and saving money, trying to rebuild my life again. And I wanted to be out in the woods, and I wanted to find a place that would be near activity. So I looked at several cabins and ended up with this one. It's really remote. I like the fact that it's got spring water, it's got free gases. And so when I had an inspector come, part of the house buying process, you have an inspector come look at the whole house. And I had already seen stuff the first time I went down the road. I saw some stuff that looked like possible sign. So I was happy with that. But when the inspector came and he was looking at the house and going through all that, I told him, you do your thing. I'm going to go hike the woods here, because I want to know what's back there. And so I hiked while he was doing that for several hours. I hiked the whole back property and saw some stuff that looked suspicious. And I'm like, yeah, this is my place.
This is it.
Yeah, it started, and I think that was February 25th is when I moved in. So I moved in the winter. And I think March, maybe I found my first possible prints. April, I got some notes here. I casted a bear print in April, which I do have bears across the street. And then in May, I found my first stick structure that first year. And then by May 26th, got my first vocal here. And then it goes into, so you kind of look, when I look through my notes, there's, it's sporadic,
right?
May, June. And then it's like, I have a bunch of stuff for June that first year, nothing in July. And then August, start getting stuff again. Then September, when I look through my notes, is always it's like it comes down to August and September seem to be really active here. And you can kind of just see that with the notes that I, as far as, so what I try to do is House of Enoch. If you read the heading, it says this is a interactive investigation page. So my whole goal for this is I'm a guy that has the opportunity to go out in the woods almost daily and kind of show people, because I go out and I look at other sites and you never see anyone's research, and you never see, I thought you never see anyone really doing stuff out in the woods, doing tracking, so I try to bring the people that view my site, I try to bring them in, and it's almost always the camera's turned towards the woods. It's never towards me. We never call anything a Bigfoot on my site. We just, even if we just say the individual or whatever, and just really just try to like state the facts and let people kind of just make up their own mind. Because my following that I have, there's not a lot of fighting. Everybody plays nice. It's really a cool thing. And I think a big part of that is because no one's making a claim.
Right.
Everybody can kind of see it, and then people can weigh in. So there's an interactive part where this is no exaggeration. I get at least 40 messages a week easily with people commenting, wanting to talk about stuff that I'm posting and shooting stuff back and forth. And I answer every one of them. And some of these have been ongoing for a long time. And, some people say, hey, did you think about doing this or that? Or could this be a possibility? And you weigh it all in. You weigh it all in. And, but that's kind of what I do. I go out, I try to post. When I look at the matrix of my site, it's usually, it'll say like you've posted 35 videos in the last 29 days. So I feel like I'm on the upper side of it. I've got, I think now through the years, I think I'm over 450 videos.
Wow.
That I've posted, and it's all stuff like that. It's sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it's not. And that's the thing I try to drive home to people is like, this is real. This is how it really is. You can hear stories that have kind of become urban legends of people that live around these things. And I'm not doubting their story. I'm just stating what it's been like for me. And it feels like it cycles. It feels like it could be 3 weeks. It feels like it could be 6 weeks. It feels sometimes like it's been 6 months before anything happens. But when it happens, it happens. And it's very hard to deny that something's happening. And as long as you leave the word Sasquatch or Bigfoot out of this, people get along. People can listen to that. People can be like, okay, and I'll capture audio. I'll capture tree knocks. I'll capture footprints on video. All that stuff, I put it out there and let people listen, be their own judge on it, and they can determine and weigh in, on that. That's the biggest thing that I try to do is just throw a lot out there so people can actually see what it's like to research, what it's like to live here. Kind of the cycles of it. And a lot of times it's just me talking wherever I'm at in my head right now. And I don't view, this isn't my research though. I do a lot of research with, basically on the structure stuff, the stick structure. I'm really, that's probably where I'm passionate about. And I don't share any of that. I've never have. There's none of it. Even the stuff that I do post about, that's not my research.
Right.
This is my experiences. This is what it's like to live here. This is, And me, it's almost like a blog, online blog of living out in a cabin. But I think it dispels some rumors. People think, oh, wow, this guy's got Bigfoot out there. And, the first thing I really try to get out there is like, hey, I'm in the woods every day almost. They're not living out here. They don't have a house out here. It really feels like whatever's happening here moves through the area. And as you start to expand on that over the years of tracking and finding what I would call sites, I have about 150 sites now that I think are legitimate, whether it's, let's say, an actual print or maybe a manipulation out there, something I can kind of say, this is a possible part of a trackway. It's about a 20-mile radius right now into at least 3 counties I'm sure of, that is all within walking distance from here. And it makes a big circle. What I've been following makes a big circle. And what was so awesome about doing this, I've been doing this for it takes years to do something like this, to actually try to establish an actual trackway through that much property and land, because you're combing, you're combing right. Areas. But during this time, there's the Stoutsville Bigfoot sighting. It's 20 minutes from here. And it makes, locally at least, it makes the news. And, there's some reports on it. And BFRO, Matt Moneymaker, they're coming out to investigate the scene. And they did a great investigation with what they had. But this was reported, a Sasquatch ran out in front of a car, and it was like cornfields, like around it that had been harvested. So it's like a intersection with fields, around it. And I mean, they got the direction, they got, that whole area, and that's really all they could do with it.
I mean, what can you do in those? I mean, so that's something that I know you've talked about on your site. And it's been a problem forever. You are very fortunate to have, such a passionate interest in the subject that you're willing to go out and document things and actually put boots on the ground and do the boring work that comes with it. But you live at a place where you're living in an active area.
Yeah.
Most researchers, I mean, during my most active times with an actual group, the group would get together maybe once a month.
Yeah.
Whenever I was doing it relatively full time for a period of probably about 7 years, it was still, maybe 3 or 4 days every couple weeks of actual in the field research time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, for years, we haven't made any progression, but for years, what are you going to do whenever you go to a location that you've never been before to investigate a one-time sighting that took place, no matter how recent it was, and then 3 days you're packing up and leaving? I mean, how much can you actually accomplish?
Yeah. And I did a whole video on this, because once I found the GPS location of that sighting, I'm like, holy hell, it was right. I mean, it couldn't be any more along my trackway that I have been establishing. So basically I have maps in what I call my gear room, mm-hmm. which is basically where I keep all my gear and junk. But on the wall, I have a map. So all these places, I put a thumbtack, and it's, and I haven't got the full circle yet. But if you go from, probably I've got 3/4 of it, or at least half of it. You go from my last place that I had documented, straight line from that as that sighting. I mean, it couldn't be any more within this thing's radius. The only thing that threw me for a loop was I expected it to turn and stay into the cover of the woods. And the only thing I can, and this to get to where it was sighted at, it had to go through several fields. Like I said, I'm driving from here using roads, because you got to go way around things here because of the valleys and stuff. There's not a lot of roads out here, but it would take me 15 minutes to drive to that location, to where if you were just a straight shot, I think this thing could easily, through the cover of night, run, be sighted, and get back into the cover of the woods, and then slowly start heading back within the radius. Because eventually, when it heads back through, I believe is when these things cross through my property. I think it's just part of a route. And I think what ties into that is, I think for years, this place has been, I mean, you got 750 acres with nobody on it, for years. Across the street, probably 750 acres that still nobody's on it. And now just me. I mean, for 20 years, I mean, this could have been like their little sanctuary. And I mean, that's kind of how I put it in my mind. Obviously, I don't know that, but it makes sense to me.
Right.
Nobody's lived here. So, but that, in this park system, I live in private land. I'm 3 miles from the closest park, but from my backyard, you can hit any of these parks under cover of trees, and you even get into Wayne National Forest, Hocking State Forest, all these. It's 900,000 acres of basically public land between national parks and state parks. You could research this area the rest of your life and never cross the same path. It's vast.
You said something important there that I kind of want to spotlight for a second. Living in Oklahoma, most of the state is not urban. Very rural state in general. Lots of wilderness, more than most people realize. However, we don't have these huge, vast expanses of forest all over the state. Certain areas of the state, yes, but for the most part, our woods are pretty small whenever you start comparing them to like the Pacific Northwest and up north.
Yeah, and we've got a happy medium between the state park system. Wayne National's the biggest here. It's huge. Mm-hmm. And that's southern Ohio. That's where I live. There's definitely, you could even tell from the topography. Eastern Ohio is very wooded. Goes all in. That's where you get all the Bigfoot encounters and stuff. Eastern Ohio. Then you get into down by Hocking County. The southern part of Ohio is almost all tree covered, and it's like this. And in between those parks, it's still tree covered. It's just private land, like where I live.
Right. Whenever you start looking at maps with less focus on, oh, well, here's a giant patch of trees, that's where they must be at, so we go there. Whenever you start looking at, okay, well, how far can they travel without running into people? How far can they travel with the trees and the creeks and everything? And the next thing you know, you're realizing that all these areas connect a lot of the time. Yeah. And they can just run around pretty freely without having to worry about bumping into people.
Yeah. And that's, that kind of gets into, I didn't catch it, but Eric did. He follows along, and he's like, he kind of keeps up with what I'm posting out here and stuff. And obviously he comes out here a lot too, but he's like, do you realize most of your encounters that you have on your property are like between 7 and 11? I'm like, No, I did not realize that, but he's right. So add that into the equation. It's, when I say encounters, I have to come back and say, I've heard knocks, or, there's
right things that you've observed.
Yeah. It's not that I've never seen anything on this property. I haven't even seen a bear on this property. I know I've got them. Occasionally, I have bear. I did catch a big bobcat and a giant bobcat on my trail cam this summer, but it's here, the knocks and the stuff and stuff being like manipulations out in the woods that were definitely not there the day before. Because when you're out in the woods every day is when you can start seeing these things, and you start, I know I've used the phrase before, you got to know the woods like it's your backyard. Mm-hmm. And if someone moves your lawn chair in your backyard, you're gonna realize it. And that's kind of what I've done here, is not only do I know my woods well enough now to kind of pick up on that, I still take pictures. On a nightly basis, I get home from work, I usually am out in the woods and I'm filming 6 to 10 videos every night. And that's one of the reasons I'm able to catch a lot of stuff, because if I'm out in the woods, I've got my video going on my phone, and usually most of that stuff gets just deleted when I get back. I mean, 90% of it, because nothing happens, or I might find something and be like, okay, this is cool to talk about. So I'll delete the rest of them, and I'll just use that little video and talk about, a structure or something I found out there, but occasionally I'm out there, and since I'm videoing so much, you'll get a knock. Just recently, I just posted 2 knocks that were captured, and I was actually trailing a 24-inch print. That was not just a print, trackway with 24-inch prints going through my property when I got those knocks. And some of the stuff that I've recorded, like stuff hitting the cabin, and that's because I'm out there recording all the time, and I just delete. I delete more than I ever post. Is just kind of my way of figuring out maybe a way to catch the most stuff. But true honesty, I'm out here alone, and this could be a brutal, like, you have to be a strong person to live somewhere alone. And like, this was my birthday weekend. I haven't talked to a soul this whole my birthday weekend.
Well, happy birthday.
Well, thank you. I haven't, I mean, I talked to my mom, obviously, right, on the phone, but if you can't go days, especially like every weekend or whatever in the winter, if you can't go without human interaction, this is not the type of place for you. Because I question it. And a lot of times I think I'm videoing and I'm talking, and I post so many videos because I'm out here and it's lonely, and it's a way to, especially like if you have something going on that's freaking you out, even though nobody's with you, I've learned that is a good way to turn the video on and start talking like to your phone. Mm-hmm. But it eases your nerves. It makes you feel like you're not literally sitting out there alone while something's going on. Or, on normal nights, that's kind of been my thing is I go out there, I post these videos and I talk, and that is kind of my what I do to keep from losing my mind out here.
I think the last time we talked, you were doing some experiments with a tree stump on your property.
Oh yeah.
Did that progress any?
this leads down to a whole other road, but it progressed a ton, and then it just stopped, completely stopped, and real head scratcher there. Like it kind of, but through this, let's just say, through these interactions. So what was happening? I would go out and I would put something on a stump, and eventually something started putting stuff back, or it would knock my stuff over. Or sometimes it'd just be like I'd put a couple pennies out there and a couple rocks, and you go back and like the penny would be turned over the other way. And I was talking to Eric, and I'm like, this, and he pointed out, he's like, this thing's got an opinion. He's like telling you, it should look like this or whatever. And so I started that, and then eventually I got onto, once it started leaving something, I was able to try to mimic what it was doing. And I think that's really when it started taking off a lot. And granted, to take a step back, when I'm out in the woods, I'll do all kinds of stuff. But one thing I do a lot is I have my own little manipulation that I do with sticks. So when I see what I'm saying is a potential site, I will do this right nearby.
Like your own signature.
My own signature. And, throughout the years of being here, anytime I see something like that, I do this. And eventually, and when I did it the last time, I did something, and this wasn't even on my property, because you kind of go back there, you're in no man's land. I don't know who the hell owns it. It's just woods. But I was out there, and I came out in my backyard, and that signature was literally in my backyard, and that blew my mind. Not what they did.
Your signature.
My signature was in my backyard.
Something recreated it in a spot where you did not do it.
Yep, on the trail that I used to.
While you were gone.
While I was gone, yes.
Not like over the period of a week or anything.
No. And another thing I did, especially like during this whole time when stuff was escalating with the stump, I don't trust anybody. I was putting up cameras. Not only did I have surveillance going on at the time, but also trail cams. I didn't tell anybody. I actually had a trail cam across the street on not my property, catching whoever was driving down my road. I had a trail cam. I would just check it to make sure no one was messing with me, because I was like, this is crazy. This is crazy. So I did the best I could to kind of be able to say, all right,
it's not a person.
Yeah. Or if it's a person, then they're hiking about 6 miles because they're not coming from the road. That's what I really felt good about. I was like, okay, someone's not coming from my road. So if they're going to come into my property, they're hiking like 6 miles through the woods to go put something in the woods to hope that I will see it. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Doesn't make a lot of sense. People are going to, they're either trying to steal something, trying to do you harm, or they're going to avoid you entirely and not leave any trace that they were there. Yeah.
We're out where I live is nothing to shoot off 800 rounds.
Oh, we do that. In your videos, I saw like a shotgun leaned up in the background,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we shoot guns. We it's not a place where you just, since I've been here, I live so far out that I've never had an unexpected visitor, because no one's going to drive an hour and 20 minutes, 2 hours out to hope that I'm here. So if anyone knocked on my door in the middle of the night, they would be answered with a gun, because they are extremely lost. Like, you can't see my cabin from the road. You can't. My road is the front's pretty paved, but by the time you get to where I'm at, it's a gravel road. It's or barely paved, if you want to put it that way. And yeah, you're seriously lost if you found your way and then drove an eighth of a mile into the woods back to where I'm actually at and not turned around.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's never happened. And it's not like that. So that's kind of how I reason through things. I don't say like a Bigfoot did this. I just at the time used the terminology, an individual did this. And because people would ask, well, how do you know someone's not messing with you? And I'm like, well, I only can do what I can do. I know they're not coming from the road. I know my one neighbors are like 80 years old. I know it's not them. And I really would think on the road side of things, I would have captured someone going across my driveway in their car or you know what I mean? And
something.
That's all you can do. But through this exchange, there was things that were presented that I eventually kind of figured out what it was. Or I don't want to say what it was, but how to kind of read it. And it helped me locate other ones, which was, and this is the kind of stuff that's when you get into my research. Mm-hmm. That's what because I am doing that now, using those and documenting that. Listen, okay, if this is all random stuff, how come I can look at this particular thing and kind of know where to go to find the next one, right, and document it and document it and repeat it over and over and over. That's what I've been doing. Like, that's my research, is like, I really think there's something to it. Now, I don't know what it could have multiple meanings, but to the stuff that I kind of figured out, that's where I know, like when I see a particular type, I know exactly kind of how to use it, put it in my toolbox to use.
You've gotten to the point where if you see this and you do this, then you see this.
Yeah. Yeah. I know pretty much how to read it to know like
which direction to go.
Yeah, kind of what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, when I have talked about it, I really try to get the human brain out of this, because everybody wants to use a human, our intelligence, right, and it's, to me, that's not what you're getting. You're to explain it to somebody.
I mean, for years, people have talked about X formations.
Yeah.
As being some sort of stay out marker, because humans made an X mean stay out.
Yeah.
Why would that mean the same thing for them?
Yeah. So it's kind of hard to, it's dangerous ground, because I use that sometimes, because since I've been here, have documented 6 X's going on both sides of my property. And I kind of do equate it to that. Like, mm-hmm, okay, we're giving you this, you seem like a cool guy. You don't bug us too much. And now, of course, this is me wild theory speculation, but that's how I read it personally.
Right.
This is ours. We'll give you this. And over the years, I've documented where that boundary is. At least that's where I'm at in my head right now. It could change. But I documented these after, like, within a week of them going up, like knowing, like, okay, because some of them are pretty close to the cabin. I'm like, okay. And the biggest one was was at my pond. It was right at the other side of my pond. There was a giant X put there that was not there. And
I think you had noticed that.
Yeah. And there was a red bucket that had probably blown off the deck, made its way, and it was underwater. at the edge of the pond on that side. And I remember making a mental note, like, I don't like trash. I'm a big on conservation and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I just made a mental note, I got to get that thing out of there. And after that X came up, that bucket was out of the water and it was sitting on, like, turned over upside down on a stump. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
So, I mean, maybe they don't like it either.
Yeah. Well, that's very possible. Very possible. So that kind of leads into, all that. Then everything stopped. It just completely stopped. I couldn't get anything back to interact with me.
Did it stop? I mean, I know you've probably racked your brain about this, but was it something you did or something that just happened, or do you have any idea?
At the time, I think it just happened. And, we haven't discussed my new friend that lives out in the woods, Richard, but he gave me his insight on it, and I really liked it. I really did. This is a guy that you think I'm a hermit. This guy is a major hermit. He calls it wood talk.
Okay.
All right. Which I'm slowly adopting that because I love it. Because that's exactly what I think you're getting. He calls structures and stuff like, he just calls it wood talk.
Now,
and
Richard is just some guy you met since you've been living there?
Well, I was directed by other local researchers, like, okay, hey, you need to talk to this guy. This guy's got like incredible evidence. He's like you. He lives out in the boonies. He's not on the internet. Can't leave him a voicemail. Or you can't, he doesn't text. You can leave him a voicemail. No technology, nothing. And he's got all this evidence. He documents like, but he's been doing it for like 50 years. You need to talk to him. And eventually I did. And this guy's very, I have to watch what I say because he's living out where he lives now because of his prior work with the government.
Okay.
He's with special forces and he was told when he got out that he had a bounty on his head. Better stay low. And this guy took that to heart for like the last 30 years. Well, he's very low trace. Yes.
He's still here. So
yeah. And he's a lot of this stuff, we did not start off very well. Let me put it to you this way. I didn't know him. He's not very good with people at first. He has very little patience for people. And neither, we're doing this phone call stuff, talking to each other. And basically he's like, I need someone, there's some woods I need to get in and I need to document these prints. But I need to have someone that has my back because I'm scared to go in there by myself and be leaning over trying to cast a print or something and get myself killed. This is a really dangerous part of the woods. And there's a lot of history there. And eventually, we start talking. He's like, well, I'll tell you. He goes, it's like this, Kain. He goes, if I take you out in the woods with me and you see one of these things or you freak out or you do anything and you put my life in danger, I'm going to shoot you in the effing face. And he meant it.
Okay.
He meant it. He's like, if you endanger my life, I will shoot you right where you stand and I'll go on, So it took a while to get to on the level. It actually took us going out. And once he saw how Eric and I both react to things, we have very low pulse. When stuff's going on, we don't react. And he's like, yeah, okay. Now we've actually become pretty good friends. And, he's here a lot. He's got all this research. He's got all kinds of pictures. He's got a smorgasbord of the Bigfoot community, everybody. And he does have a lot of these people know him. Very few people really mention him much, but you can tell, like I just heard a podcast this weekend that's totally about him.
Oh, wow.
And about his property and stuff. But now some of this too, granted, he's told people don't, I can't be out there, but he's got a lot of theories and knowledge of his own that he shares with me about wood talk. And, I showed him all the stuff that I've got, and he just looked at me and goes, well, let me guess. He goes, it just stopped. I said, yeah, actually it did. He goes, you want to know why? And I said, yeah, I would love to know why. He's like, they wanted to know your name. You never introduced yourself. They want to know your wood name. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, that was that. He's like, I've been through this. He's like, that's the next progression. And he's like, he goes, you're rude. You did. They want to know who you are. They want to know, they've watched you all the time out here, and obviously probably deem you as not a threat, that you're starting to get this. And it even came down to, this a couple of years ago when this first started happening. I'll put this in now because later it might be significant. I'm not sure, but we'll find out. But at the time this stuff was going on the stump, I was able to find some 9-inch prints at the time. So like a juvenile, maybe if you want to jump there,
right?
It was a smaller print that I had some prints that I casted, and there's this one that about a 9-inch print, and I was able to track this. So we had the stump that I was using. Finally found this print. I tracked it clear over the next ridge, over into an area. Never told anybody about this. Found a similar stump that I knew this thing had traveled by, and I recreated the scenario back there, way deeper in the woods. And just to kind of try to rule out again, like someone messing with me, no one's going to know about this. And I started getting activity there. And it was very shortly after that, it just stopped. So along comes Richard. He, this is several years later now, tells me that. And now this is the first year that I've gotten interactions back again in the woods. Not per se. Well, I guess that one stump did get some stuff, but started getting some back and forth again. And now it kind of feels like it stopped again.
Is that when you did the signature structure that you've been making?
I do that. I still do that.
I'm just curious. How did you introduce yourself? Like, what's your wood name? How did you give it to them?
Okay. Their wood name is basically, that's what I kind of thought. I thought, well, I am, I do this signature.
Yeah.
When I'm out on my deck, I play native drums. And sometimes I take my drum, got like carry native drums with me sometimes, and I just bang it every once in a while. So anything in the area associates that drum with me. If I'm on the deck, it travels through these valleys. So if I'm out there, a lot of times I'll have that drum. So anything that's 2 ridges over, whatever, be like, oh, hey, that guy's out, and maybe entice them to come take a look. But no, the wood name is actual. It could be whatever, but yeah. He says it's got to be something that's the same. You do it every time. And technically it could be your name, like you, but he tends to think that they like to mimic things like we've all talked about, they're mimickers. Mm-hmm. That's what we talk about anyway. So if you can give them something that, they might have to practice or something, but he says eventually you'll hear that come back to you, and then you'll know.
Get out of town.
you'll hear your wood name.
And that's why they do it. Now,
Well,
see, I just, okay, so, geez, I need to remember I'm doing a podcast here. I'm just saying, I mean, I personally haven't experienced it because I didn't, that's not something I would know.
yeah.
But other people I know who were involved in long-term research projects on private properties definitely have heard and recorded their name, other people's names. People have heard this. This is an ongoing thing that has happened.
Yeah.
That I've heard from various people in these type scenarios. And that's just pretty interesting that this guy,
Yeah, he's right there. Now, I personally have not heard my wood name come back. I did start doing it. I do it every time now I go out. I kind of let's just put it, you announce yourself. So
Right.
I have a thing that I do that what I did is I know another animal's not going to mimic it. If I hear it, it's gonna freak me out. But that's kind of what he says. That is interesting enough to me to try.
With that logic, though, safe to assume that they would have their own wood names that they would use?
I think there's
a big jump.
Yeah. From my experience of being out here and listening, they do identify themselves with, and this took me a couple years. This took me sitting out on my deck endless nights and being out there enough when this finally started clicking. Because I always thought I would hear stuff going through the woods, and I caught it many, many times sitting out on my deck, and I always thought it was one going through the property. I always thought, okay, he's over here now, and because it always started with a knock. I mean, a solid knock. I'm like, ooh, no, that's interesting. It'd always be on the other side of the pond, and then you'd hear something like up on behind my cabin here, but eventually there was each one would be different. So the identifier was basically what was being like let's say a knock and a mouth pop was one of them. One sounded like it was hitting metal, and there's not, the response was like 10 minutes apart. And I have witnessed this enough times in my woods that I will say that is the 3 to 4 of them that are going, whatever's doing that out in the woods, this is what they do, and this is how they kind of identify each other, where their locations are at. I've heard it too many times, and it's always the same. And I even tested that theory once, because I was sitting out on my deck, and I was sitting out, no lights on or anything, and I was in a really dark corner of my deck. I've been out there forever, just sitting there, and I hear a wood knock across the pond. So I look at my phone, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to get a mouth pop here in about 10 minutes. So from like behind me. So I waited about 8 minutes, and I do my own mouth pop, and the reaction was instant. Something came crashing down through the woods and hit the top of my carport so hard it sounded like a gunshot.
Wow.
It so loud and intense that it almost paralyzed me. Like it really did. It instantly knew, like, hey, something's amiss here, because someone just did my mouth pop or whatever. It knew immediately. It came down, and man, I'm surprised it didn't damage my carport. It's a metal roof, and And I was like, okay, that's, after cleaning my shorts, I realized. And then it was a while later, I had gotten off work, and even when I got home, I could hear a 4-wheeler somewhere. And I think this helped because it masked my sound. I went straight from my truck into the woods. I could hear this 4-wheeler buzzing around somewhere. Sound travels. But as this 4-wheeler went down my road, is actually what it was doing. It sounded like it was coming up the driveway. It got really loud. It was just the way the sound was traveling. But, I mean, instantly there was a knock. And so I just dropped where I was at. And I just sat there. And I sat there till it got dark. It was getting dark out in the woods. And I was hearing this. It was like, it was that same thing. It was a knock, the pop, and the bonk. That's what I call it. I don't know what else to call it. In kind of the same areas. And it got to a point to where I had been sitting still for so long, my legs went asleep. And when I tried to get up to stand up quietly, my legs were numb. And I kind of shuffled around in the leaves, and instantly it was like everything stopped. And it was like I walked out of the woods, didn't hear another peep. Like, I don't think anything knew I was in the woods because that sound had hidden my sound going into the woods. And then me just dropping, sitting there, I don't think anything knew I was out there until I had to actually stand up because I was getting the prickly feet and everything. And I shuffled around and it just stopped instantly.
Wow.
But again, I see people go out, and I always question that now. So I see people hearing a knock, and everybody grabs their tree knockers and they knock. And to me, I'm like, I think you probably just gave yourself away. If there's any kind of strategy, which I feel like I've witnessed, the strategy of how they identify themselves, at least this group, I think that's a bad call. I think what people should do is they should listen first and foremost in their area, but don't think that like it could be 10 minutes later. It could be, and just listen and try to find a cadence or something to what you're experiencing in your area, or a vocal in your area. Listen to what's in your area that you might hear. Like here, we normally get, if we do hear something, it's one long howl. It's different from, I know what y'all do down south and stuff, and I've never heard that up here. I hear a long, just one long high pitched. Now that doesn't mean it doesn't. It's just I can only go by what I hear around here.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be something more northern.
Yeah, and even
in mountain regions or places of elevation.
I've even kind of noticed. I'm not going to swear to it because I haven't researched it enough, but I feel like from what I've seen on the structures and or you want to call it wood talk or whatever, it seems more sophisticated up north than it does down south. And it's just, I've been there a lot. It's not that you don't see that stuff. It's just, I don't see it quite as intricate, or maybe I'm just not in the area enough to pick up on, because I do think that different areas they do things a little different. So it could be as simple as that. It's just what I've seen. It's a little harder for me to kind of go down south. I still think I can do it, or at least get on a trackway or something like that. But as far as seeing the stuff that I recognize up here, like I can't unsee it. When I go in the woods now, it's like I'm looking at billboards. If the stuff's in there, because Eric and I, we've traveled 3,000 miles hiked. And one thing you get really good at doing is saying, yeah, there's nothing in these woods, because we've, thousands of miles of seeing absolutely just normal. I mean, you have to have that under your belt before you recognize what's unusual.
Absolutely.
But when you see the unusual, for me, it stands out. It's like it truly is like a billboard sign. And I'm like, oh, there's something. It just sticks out so prominent. And probably because I'm so into this, it's really the passion of where my research is right now is that.
That concludes part 1 of my conversation with Kain Michael of the House of Enoch. I hope you'll tune in to episode 37 for part 2 of the conversation. And check out BigfootCrossroads.com, where you can find links to all the social media, merchandise, and all the past episodes of the podcast. And until then, remember, there's something in the woods.